Carlos Fuentes is widely considered to be Mexico's foremost contemporary novelist. His body of work also includes essays, short stories, and plays, all of which have been shaped by the history and the politics of his Mexican heritage.
Hello, good beings, and welcome back to Midnight Requiem. Today we will be talking about Carlos Fuentes, was a Mexican novelist and essayist. Among his works are The Death of Artemio Cruz, Aurora, Terra Nostra, The Old Gringo, and Christopher Unborn. In his obituary, the New York Times described Fuentes as one of the most admired writers in the Spanish-speaking world and an important influence on the Latin American boom, the explosion of Latin American literature in the 1960s and 70s. While The Guardian called him Mexico's most celebrated novelist, his many literary honors include the Miguel de Cervantes Prize, as well as Mexico's highest award, the Belisario Dominguez Medal of Honor 1999. He was often named as a likely candidate for the Nobel Prize in Literature, though he never won. Fuentes was born in Panama City, the son of Berta and Rafael Fuentes, the latter of whom was a Mexican diplomat. As the family moved for his father's career, Fuentes spent his childhood in various Latin American capital cities, an experience he later described as giving him the ability to view Latin America as a critical outsider. From 1934 to 1940, Fuentes' father was posted to the Mexican embassy in Washington, D.C., where Carlos attended English language school, eventually becoming fluent. He also began to write during this time, creating his own magazines, which he shared with apartments on his block. In 1938, Mexico nationalized foreign oil holdings, leading to a national outcry in the U.S. He later pointed to the event as the moment in which he began to understand himself as Mexican. In 1940, the Fuentes family was transferred to Santiago, Chile. There he first became interested in socialism, which would become one of his lifelong passions, in part through his interest in poetry of Pablo Neruda. He lived in Mexico for the first time at the age of 16 when he went to study law at the National Autonomous University of Mexico in Mexico City, with an eye toward a diplomatic career. During this time, he also began working as the daily newspaper Hoy and writing short stories. He later attended the Graduate Institute of International Studies in Geneva. Fuentes' first novel, Where the Air is Clear, was an immediate success on its publication in 1958. The novel is built around the story of Federico Robles, who has abandoned his revolutionary ideals to become a powerful financier, but also offers a kaleidoscopic presentation of Vigentes of Mexico City, making it as much as a biography of the city as of an individual man. The novel was celebrated not only for its prose, which made heavy use of interior monologue and exploration of subconsciousness, but also for its stark portrait of inequality and moral corruption in modern Mexico. A year later, he followed with another novel, The Good Conscience, which depicted the privileged middle classes of a medium-sized town, probably modeled on Guanajuato, described a contemporary reviewer as the classic Marxist novel. It tells the story of a privileged young man whose impulses towards social equality are suffocated by his family materialism. His 1985 novel, The Old Gringo, Gringo Viejo, loosely based on an American author Ambrose Bierce's disappearance during the Mexican Revolution, became the first U.S. bestseller written by a Mexican author. The novel tells the story of Harriet Winslow, a young American woman who travels to Mexico and finds herself in the company of an aging American journalist called only the Old Gringo, and Tomas Oyorio, a revolutionary general. Like many of Fuentes' works, it explores the way in which revolutionary ideas became corrupted, as Oyorio chooses to pursue the deed to an estate where he once worked as a servant, rather than follow the goals of revolution. In 1989, the novel was adapted into the U.S. film Old Gringo, starring Gregory Peck, Jane Fonda, and Jimmy Smits. A long profile of Fuentes in the U.S. magazine Mother Jones described the filming of the Old Gringo in Mexico with Fuentes on the set. In the mid-1980s, Fuentes began to conceptualized his total fiction, past and future, in 14 cycles called La Edad de Tiempo, explaining that his total work is a lengthy reflection on time. The plan of the cycle first appeared as a page in the Spanish edition of his satirical novel, Christopher Unborn, in 1987, and as a page in his subsequent books with minor revisions to the original plan. In 1999, Fuentes published the novel The Years with Laura Diaz, a companion book to the death of Artemio Cruz. The characters are from the same period, but the story is told by a woman exiled from her province after revolution. The novel includes some of Fuentes' own family history in Veracruz and has been called a vast panoramic novel dealing with questions of progress, revolution, modernity, and the ordinary life of the individual that struggles to find its place. His later novels include Inez 2001, The Eagle's Throne 2002, and Destiny and Desire 2008. His writing also includes several collections of stories, essays, and plays. Fuentes' works have been translated into 24 languages. He remained prolific to the end of his life, with an essay on the new government of France appearing in Reforma newspaper on the day of his death. Mexican historian Enrique Corozet was a vigorous critique of Fuentes and his fiction, dubbing him a "guerrero dandy" in a 1988 article for the perceived gap between his Marxist politics and his personal lifestyle. Corozet accused Fuentes of selling out to the PRI government and being out of touch with Mexico, exaggerating its people to appeal to foreign audiences. There is the suspicion in Mexico that Fuentes merely uses Mexico as a theme, distorting it for a North American public, claiming credentials that he does not have. The essay published in Octavio Paz magazine Voltaire began a feud between Paz and Fuentes that lasted until Paz's death. Following Fuentes' death, however, described him to reporters as one of the most brilliant writers of the 20th century. On May 15, 2012, Fuentes died in Ángeles del Pedregal Hospital in southern Mexico City from a massive hemorrhage. He had been brought there after his doctor had found him collapsed in his Mexico City home. Mexican President Felipe Calderón wrote on Twitter, "I am profoundly sorry for the death of our loved and admired Carlos Fuentes, writer and universal Mexican. Rest in peace." Nobel laureate Mario Vargas Llosa stated, "With him, we lose a writer whose work and whose presence left a deep imprint." French President Hollande called Fuentes a great friend of our country and stated that Fuentes had defended with ardor a simple and dignified idea of humanity. Salman Rushdie tweeted, "R.I.P. Carlos, my friend." Fuentes received a state funeral on May 16th, with his funeral cortege briefly stopping traffic in Mexico City. The ceremony was held in the Palacio de Bellas Artes and was attended by President Calderón. As always, my good being, be loving, caring to each other. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe, and leave comments. Have a wonderful day.